Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, all hail Tahj Brooks, and we investigate a rogue fake punt.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you and a few different things to dive into today on a Texas Tech football front. Want to get to one of the biggest turning points in the game from Saturday coming up in just a moment. Had a ton of questions about this since the ball game came to a conclusion, so wanted to get to that fake punt we saw attempted by the Red Raiders, and also want to get to obviously what was arguably the biggest problem for the Red Raiders on Saturday, and that was being beaten soundly up front offensively. We mentioned yesterday a comment from Cody Campbell talking about buying an offensive line, which is fun to think about, but I want to get into with you today sort of the difference in going out and buying an O-line, building an O-line, and or developing an O-line, or maybe if all those things can kind of run together. But got to kick off the program with one man and one man only. He wears number 28. We needed to carve out some time on our first episode, I think, for all the weeping and gnashing of teeth as a result of the final score. So we didn't want to throw our Tahj Brooks conversation in on yesterday's episode, but I wanted to carve out a big chunk today to congratulate Mr. Tick, 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 Tahj Brooks on having his name at the top of the all-time rushing list for Texas Tech, which includes some all-time greats, some Doak Walker Award winners, some legends like the Golden Palomino. I mean, you can just run down the list. It's an accomplished one, and Tahj Brooks is now at the top of it. Was really glad to see him get to that mark. Wish it could have been a little better party as far as celebrating it after it happens, but doesn't take any of the shine off of that achievement for a really good football player and by all accounts, a really good guy.
Yeah, he and I think I don't know, he would have to say that, but I don't know at what level that was a big part of why he wanted to come back here. But I mean, it's a byproduct, certainly. And it gets lost in the game, and you could kind of see it happening, and you're down, and you're trying to, and you know this, being at the game doing what you do, it was just kind of this awkward, because Tahj will be the first one to tell you, my first concern is winning this football game, and you weren't able to do that, but he, and you can't really. They did go out there and get the actual ball on the one carry. That kind of happened under the radar. I mean, I noticed what they were doing and knew why they were doing it, but they just kind of kept the game going. And I just you hate it that you can't really celebrate it because it wasn't a win, but it's still a heck of an accomplishment. And I'll be careful how I say this because it's not a negative by any means at all, but I'm glad this is over. I think that a lot of talk there had been a lot of chatter about this. There had been a lot of talk about it before the season, leading up to it. I have no way of knowing if you're running things or purposely doing this or that to ensure that this is something that. But I just it's. And this is the wrong word to use, although I just don't have a better one. But I'm glad that there's not that burden anymore. Maybe, and it's just it's in the past now, and you can kind of because maybe you do get Jacoby Williams in a bit more. Maybe you don't have to really lean on Tahj to 231 times or whatever. And he seemingly has handled this okay. I think he's just built it's like that one pitcher I'm trying to remember when Texas Tech and Tim Tadlock played, like, I want to say like Sam Houston State several years ago in the playoffs or the NCAA tournament, and it was like a Monday game, winner decide all, and they trotted out a pitcher that had already thrown like 16 innings, it seemed like, and he's throwing like 82. I mean, he's just like rubbing on the bill of his hat, trying to give anything he can, but he got like a rubber arm. He's not throwing really fast, but he could just handle it. Some guys are just built like that, and Tahj seemingly is somebody that can just handle a heavy workload, and it doesn't affect him too much. But I say all that to, like, he's earned this. I think a lot of people wanted to try to help him get to this point. It was important for Joey and the offensive line and for, all the things. And now he stands alone on atop the record books. But I'm just glad that it's not, just hanging around anymore. Like, okay, well, what if he gets hurt? Maybe he doesn't, just all that stuff. So I'm just glad that is in the past, and you're kind of on the other side of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it can become kind of a thing that's bigger than what the main thing needs to be, which I don't know if it ever actually did that, but
I agree.
Probably some added pressure to a degree between the years or something like that.
Yeah, and he'd missed a game. And so, but he had stayed ahead of the pace. But yeah, I think that's, I guess that you phrased it maybe better than I did. Some added pressure, just again, it was a thing, and now it's not. And so you're on the other side of it. But I happy for him and everything he's accomplished. I'm thrilled that he's back here. It will not be easy to replace. And they've handed it to him a ton. And but maybe now it's not. Maybe and that's maybe a bigger picture conversation as we get into the week. Now that you enter into this phase of the season when you're not going to Arlington, maybe it opens it up for other pieces of your roster in different phases.
That's kind of interesting to consider also, as a matter of fact. But when Tahj Brooks arrives on campus, do you have memories of him as a player? Because I really feel like he developed into this.
Yeah.
I liked our first glance at him. He was always a bruiser and a powerful guy and a guy that was always picking up yards after contact. Featured every down kind of back. I don't know if I, knew that immediately to be his future, but that's what he became. I really feel like he's someone that has made the most out of his time on the college level in regards to becoming the best player he could in the time he had.
And I don't know who was Batman and who was Robin, but it was just always him and Sir Roderick, kind of this. And I'll be honest with you, the first time one of my lasting memories about this kid as a player, when you maybe saw something, and you may remember this game, and it was an important game now in the tenure of Matt Wells and that staff. But when they went to Houston early on in the season, and they're playing at NRG Stadium, and if you remember, Dana Holgerson was still the head coach at University of Houston, and they went on some of these like 17, 18 play drives. They're just sitting on it, totally trying to play keep away. But Tahj had a couple of big runs in that game and ultimately kind of won it and literally ran away. You had some key turnovers in that game, but that was a game where he really showed and started to show some glimpses of some of this. And heck, those were some of the longer runs in that game, or one of them anyway, that he's had in his entire career. He's not going to be known for the 50-yarder here or the 65-yarder there or the 32-yarder here. No, it's going to be about he's a walking 5-yard carry. That's what he is based on his averages, even though we're just coming off of last Saturday when he had 20 carries of 3 yards or less. But based on his averages.
Yeah.
But that's my first one of the first things, because he was a major part in that particular game and was as big a reason as anybody why you won it. And that was a key moment for that staff at the time. They needed to win that game, and they did.
I'd be really curious to see, we talk a lot about explosiveness or like big play potential with him, things like that, and how that may be the missing piece from his repertoire. But I'd be really curious to see what type of explosiveness or big play potential a guy could have if he's not sidestepping a defensive tackle as soon as the ball is handed to him and having to then re-engage the motor to get downhill. The thought of downhill momentum is a real thing, and he's always having to regenerate his own, it seems like, a couple of seconds after he takes the handoff. But I think he'll have an opportunity in the National Football League. I don't know in what way he'll be used or maybe what way he can stick, but the way that he commits himself to the Monday through Friday part of this thing called football, I think will give him that opportunity, if nothing else. Really excited to see maybe what he can do with the professional chance.
Yeah, and that's part of why I don't know. People may hear me say something different here as I say this, but as you kind of turn the page here and you kind of look at your season and you're not necessarily going to be a part of the Big 12 title picture, you just wonder if you try to lighten his load a little bit just for him personally, to try to keep him fresher or keep less tread off of his tires. I don't know how that conversation would go. He may say, man, dude, I'm here. Let's finish it off strong. I really don't know, but he will get a shot at it professionally, and there's no telling, what that looks like on what situation he's going to. I mean, he belongs like on a Pittsburgh Steeler type of roster. He belongs on a Baltimore Raven type of roster. He seems like an AFC North kind of guy. Cold weather, bruiser, does all the dirty work. I mean, I would love to see him play for a guy like Mike Tomlin. I mean, that's just what it is. I'm sitting there thinking about, that's what I would envision for a kid like this, because that's his style. He stands for all the right things and all the stuff. But I don't know what you're looking at from a draft pick standpoint. He could be picked. He could be an undrafted free agent. He will get a shot. There is zero doubt about that. And I would be stunned if he didn't stick because of who he is and how he operates. Yeah. And here's the thing. His floor is really high. Now, his ceiling may not be really high, but like when you pick him, you're not missing. That's what, and so it depends on when that pick is or what you're looking for, how it fits with what's around him and all that stuff. But, we can talk about that next April. All that stuff, but he's still got some more ball to play. But he's emptied his bucket here, man.
Yeah, congratulations to Tahj and his family on that great achievement. Will be remembered around here for a long, long time, and still some opportunities to stack more on top of that. So be curious to see what the number is when it's all said and done. Sort of in an associated way, sticking with the ground game, I suppose. The offensive line. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet only $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and a whole lot more, all in one place. So when you get a hunch, a gut instinct in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a gut feeling again, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Chris, we talked yesterday about a response by Cody Campbell to an impassioned, inflamed Red Raider fan who was asking for him to buy an offensive line. He said he will. But it kind of got me to thinking about how far you can actually get just quote unquote going out and buying an offensive line, even if you had almost every wish granted. Because I've said before on this show, and I believe this, I may be wrong, but I believe this, that you can't build, the best offensive line only through the portal, or even in a majority kind of way through the portal year after year after year. And that's what I really think about when I think about buying, quote unquote, an offensive line, kind of like free agency. And I guess that's sort of where I delineate between buying, building, or developing. Because I know that obviously prep level guys, high school level guys, they command dollars too. So you can go buy some of those guys also. But then there's some development that comes with that as they mature in a lot of different ways. But I'm just curious as to your take as to how, feasibly you could actually go about improving this thing, because I don't feel like, and go ahead and tell me where I may be wrong, if there are some prospects in the pipeline already on campus, I do not feel like you're going to be getting away from, hitting the portal heavily with this group really anytime soon. And not just like this next year, but I don't know, for some years to come. So is my general premise wrong in that I don't feel like you can build the best offensive line repeatedly through the portal? What do you make of that? And then on the ground in the 806, what do you think it actually looks like as far as that process and I guess a year or two to come?
There are various schools of thought here or theories. I don't know what ultimately is right. There's probably some truth in a lot of what we'll discuss here, and then some mistruth or some different ideas about the best way to go about this. Had you known what you ultimately know now, I think you would have bent a little bit and given Monroe Mills what he was asking for. They felt, I want to say they probably felt like they could upgrade there, and it's not like Monroe Mills was some All-American or even an all-conference guy. As it turns out, though, he's much better than anything that you have at tackle now.
And if I remember that timeline correctly, there was an agreement, and then there was like a break for the holidays or something, and then he comes back with additional requests or a request for more. And then it was like the second agreement they couldn't come together on, I guess.
As the story goes, I think his girlfriend was like, "Hey, you need to go ask for more." And I can't. I'm not in that meeting or part of those conversations, but that's kind of the way.
Pillow talk.
Yeah, as legend has it, that's kind of what ended up being, and the dollar figure at the time, and I even thought, well, that's crazy. It would have been way under what a lot of, I don't want to say average, but pretty good offensive linemen were getting. And you just that was the one thing that I just don't think anybody really in the sport had a good feel for at the time. I credit to and I think it's, I don't want to give too much credit here for all those lifelong Colorado fans that are out there watching, but Deion Sanders, their offensive line was so bad last year, and they'd given up 40 plus sacks. They've given up a bunch of sacks this year, but it is better. But I think he just was like, man, we got to protect my kid. So I'm willing, if we got $1.5 million, go, spend $250 each on 5 new guys, find the best 5 guys we can. And that was, I think, at the time, a bit above and beyond what anybody was really doing. And so, because I've heard, again, do we know what's true? No, and I don't want to portray that this is fact. There's a lot of speculation that like UT is paying their offensive line starters like $600,000 each, and they do have. They have a first rounder. They've got some quality folks, but so I guess what I'm saying is to wrap all that up. I do think you can go. It's all about choosing correctly. I think that as you look at Texas Tech's offensive line, like I feel comfortable in saying that Vinny Scurry and Sheridan Wilson are probably going to be starters for you next year. After that, I think that we have lots of questions. I don't know if you're filling it out with what's on your roster now and just like the younger guys or like the Buchanans or the Merrimans or whatever. I don't. I think those I think that you may have a couple of starters that are playing elsewhere right now that will be starters for you, is how I would go about it. I don't know if that's where it stops. It remains to be seen like what on your roster will walk out the door, or that you will say, hey, we have to trim this roster, or, hey, man, it's just not going to work out for you here. That's a two-way street. But I think it's about picking correctly, and you probably have a much better feel for the market now. You have a much better feel about what you need specifically, and you probably have had a lot of lead time to kind of identify and be ready for when this window opens. Because I can't emphasize to you enough, it was speed dating last time. You've literally got people at your bowl practices on campus, and they've got other visits planned, and you're trying to figure out, do I want this one? Do I want to wait on the next couple of guys that are coming in? This guy that's on campus, I kind of like him. I don't really know him that well, but he's telling me, hey, dude, they're offering me. I mean, because like Scurry picked Auburn over you. You had the UTEP kid in, which was a prime candidate. He ends up taking Colorado's offer. But you're all just trying to figure it out, and you don't know which way's coming and going. But you've got to get somebody, and it's just but I think they'll be better prepared for that this time, and other people may be as well. But there's
worth pointing out.
There's some schools of thought, though, as far as the portal goes and building it, that you're just not gonna get anybody too good, because why would they leave where they're at? But I think that's could be largely true. There are probably going to be plenty of exceptions to that, though. It's all about who you pick. The Missouri Oklahoma example was a great one, because they took a freshman All-American off of OU's roster, and he went to Missouri, and Missouri paid big dollars. And then Oklahoma's coaches and staff were spent a lot of the offseason squawking. And then after Missouri's win over Oklahoma this weekend, the Missouri coach, he punched back. He had a lot to say, but it all stemmed from an offensive lineman that was very good switching spots. I think it's worth noting, as far as like how the portal will work, though, and your revenue share, and then this little window that you're going to have to like utilize some money. You can utilize that to keep certain guys here if you want them. That may be a bigger conversation that we can spend more time on later in the week. But I mean, I think Jacob Ponton is somebody, I think that they're really high on. I just don't know if you're ready to hand the reins over to him as a redshirt freshman and say, here you go. But they love his fight. They love his work ethic. They love his size. He just needs about 30 more pounds. I think Holton Hendricks is somebody they're high on. I think Ellis Davis, Nick Fadig. I mean, there's some pieces, but these are going to be redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores. So we shall see. But I don't, you don't hear the names of Dylan Shaw or Daniel Sill or Caden Carr as much. And those were some guys you thought would, so to your point, sorry for the long answer, but to your point, I don't know if everything is just here still ready for you to kind of grow into this deal. And like there's some, but I just don't know if I think you're going to need some outside influence to help this position group. Yeah.
No, it's a complicated question, so I don't know that there is a short answer to any of this.
I know. Yeah.
The only thing I know that I can say shortly is I want it to be better yesterday. So go ahead and do that if you can, please.
Or Saturday.
And recruiters.
Yeah, I wish it was better on Saturday.
Before we get out of here, Chris, going back to Saturday, this has been as much discussed, I think, in our YouTube comment section as anything among Texas Tech fans, and that was the fake punt. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Going back to Saturday, this has been as much discussed, I think, in our YouTube comment section as anything among Texas Tech fans, and that was the fake punt that you pulled off when it was still I believe, one-possession game at that time. And I don't know that it really felt like, you're right there with them, just back and forth. I didn't quite have that vibe, but the scoreboard said you were. So, technically you were. Now, you were going to punt the football away. So obviously there was a chance there to extend the lead beyond that. But then we see a fake punt that looks like it didn't look like anything really organized. It looked like bad spacing on a basketball court. You got two guys coming off the screen to catch a pass, and they're both in the same spot. There's only one ball, guys. And Coach McGuire and his staff have caught a lot of heat over this as far as the decision. But I'm kind of wondering what you thought about that sequence, how it came together, and why we saw what we did, because it seemed a little out of the norm.
Yeah, and it's something that we didn't get into on yesterday's show because there was so many other things to get to it. And there's no media availability this week, I don't guess, because you typically have your press conference with Coach McGuire. You typically have Kenny Perry availability on a Monday and a Tuesday, and a lot of that would get vetted out, talked about publicly, and all those things. I asked Joey about it after the game. He was asked about it as well in the post game. And I think he kind of commented on, I'll tell you what I think happened, but he kind of just was like looking for a change of momentum. He talked about the spacing being poor and all that stuff. Something I'll be interested to see if they get asked about this. Maybe I can ask Joey about it on his coach's show, which would be like next week.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, and I said this on the broadcast, although I think I said it in a commercial break, or my mic wasn't working. I was having a few technical difficulties with some frequencies and things like that. Imagine that. Yeah, that's right. Encryption and all that. But everybody was not on the same page, and this is why I say this, because and not with the execution of the play. I'm talking about the aftermath. I've got Joey looking at Kenny Perry going like palms up, like, I mean, and so I think that's an audible. I think somebody,
really?
I think that's what I think. Nobody's told me that. That's what I think. Because if you go rewatch it, and I wanted to, there's like 4 or 5 of the players, as soon as the ball is incomplete, there's like 4 or 5 players that look at the sideline and go like, it's almost like, what has just happened? What is that? And I think there's times when you're coaching a team and you always have it built in. It's like an inbounds play in basketball, just to use your basketball analogy. You may have an inbounds play, like an underneath out of bounds play drawn up where you're like, hey, run box, and you're running cross screens or back screens and whatever. But you're always taught if you see, hey man, they're just not guarding the one guy running to the basket, just throw it to him. Screw the play, right. Just run it. I think that's what happened here. Although I think, because if you go rewatch it, because this is what I wanted to see. There's 2 guys basically in the slot, and you've got 1 DB over them. So technically, somebody's uncovered. Jason Llewellyn is the up back and is the one that throws the pass. Right. I don't know whose call it is. I don't know if this is what happened. But somebody is technically uncovered, but they're just like right next to each other. And so you see the one tech player, and I can't remember who it was, but he's like almost like is running like up the field, and he just gets mugged. He just is basically just tackled, and they're engaged. It's either holding or pass interference. But they pick up the flag and all that. The other guy is uncovered, but they're still also close to each other that there's just not a lot of space. This isn't like you're out wide. There's just too much traffic going on. But I just wonder if this was an audible and somebody saw something that, while in their mind he's uncovered, but he's really not uncovered. If there's just too much going on. So it'll be interesting to see if you find that out. And that's not what was said after the game to me or in the press conference and whenever I talked to Joey for the deal. But
you think Joey would say that, or would he cover for a player in that instance?
I think a lot of times he'd cover for whether Coach Perry or whatever. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. But I'm going off of body language. I mean, when you see coaches going like, what? Like, and then all the players are looking to the sideline, like, I mean, so that's why I say what I say. I may be completely wrong. But
I'm trying to figure out which scenario makes more sense, that you would actually go for it in that situation. where you are on the field.
I thought it was
The
strange.
offense
I
you're
thought it
facing.
was strange. I thought it was strange at that point when you're down 24-20, and I know you're trying to switch it, but your defense had been okay to that point, and
Certainly don't want to give Shadur Sanders a short field.
no,
I think.
and that's why I thought you get a lot of the reaction too, like, whoa, So
Yeah.
maybe we'll come to find that out. I don't know if we ever will. But
I'm sure a week from Thursday, 2 weeks after the game, Coach McGuire would love a question from you. Coach, let me take you back to that fake punt.
I know, yeah.
In the third quarter.
Which whenever we get to that point, it'll feel like that this Colorado game was like 3 months earlier.
A lifetime ago.
Yeah, that's just how
I'm sure
that's just
that.
how it works.
So somebody maybe went steaming Willie Beeman out there. I don't know, drawing something up and making a call. It was crazy to even. I mean, first off, I couldn't see who anybody was on these jerseys, so I'm like doing quadruple check. Did I just see Jason Llewellyn throw a pass? I hadn't even seen his name mentioned this year. And then one of the biggest moments of the season, I'm like, wait a second, he's the guy that. Yeah.
And do you so the point is that what happened? Yeah. Would you remove the ability to? Would you say, hey man, I don't care what you see. I don't care if there's somebody standing out there wide open. We're punting this ball. Like, do you remove that if that is what happened? Or, hey, you need to identify clearly that, but I guess what I'm saying is that it's important to note not everybody was on the same page there.
No.
That's what is important to note. And how it got to that point, I can't tell you, but everybody didn't appear to be on the same page. So,
well, I got to tell you, if I'm a head coach, I ain't covering for that guy. Maybe that's why I'm a podcast host and cattle raiser. I don't know. But yeah. I'm like, no, that was not our call. Because, I mean, it's a huge point in the game. The fourth down aggression or decision-making has already been well discussed and well documented in Coach McGuire's tenure. And obviously is going to be discussed a lot this week as it relates to that ball game. That's not where you lost the game, but it was a huge play. And I think was it 3 points given up after that, or did they get a touchdown? I'm trying to remember. I think the defense actually bowed up a little bit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know it was 24-20. I think they actually scored a touchdown.
Did they get a TD?
I think that's where they threw the touch pass up in the corner.
You're right. Take us to 31. Yeah,
Colorado wideout. Yeah, it was at 31.
Okay, I'm glad we could relitigate this, but that we had to because that's not an answer I necessarily expected. So
and again, I'm just going off of what I saw, and I told my guys up in the booth. I'm like, man, and I think we thought whether my communication was going out over the radio because I was having some issues there, or it was in the commercial break. But I just kind of relayed to them. But then as soon as I think they scored 2 or 3 plays later, so we just never ended up circling back to it.
We got a new fire to put out. There's
exactly. And I did ask Joey. I just said, "Tell me about the fake punt," and he kind of was like, he talked about spacing and all those things. But
covering for a player in that instance, if that was the case, man, that'd be tough for my selfish bones to do. But Joey McGuire, better man than I, if that was the case. But yeah, you're like, man, this cabin's already burned down. We're on to the next fire. We've got to go get to this sector of the woods or whatever. And you get to what's next, right? Like he is fond of saying all the time, you got to get on to the next thing.
And you can say what you want, but I would be, now that I've thought about it, I would be shocked if we ever, because Kenny would be the first one to say, hey, man, that's my fault, like for allowing for a check or for calling it or whatever it may have been. He will totally stand up there and then Joey would kind of does the same. I mean, that's just how these guys are. It's why guys love playing for these dudes and all that, right, wrong, or indifferent. But I hear what you're saying too, like, because there is a lot of criticism out there about it, amongst other things, and that comes with the territory, comes with the job. But these are all. There's just not anybody over there that's not like stand up dude, and they have typically gone that way of like, just sitting up there and saying, yeah, what do you want to know? Like, it's my fault. I'm responsible. So anyway, that's just the way this stuff goes sometimes, but who knows? Maybe we'll add that to another chapter into the the folklore of Texas Tech football over the years. I feel like we could write a book of all the different because the first example I thought about this. Do you remember? And I want to say it may have been the 2008 season. Do you remember when Nebraska was here, and you had to win that game in kind of dramatic fashion? Like looked like, you may get got here. There's a play in that game where you see somebody jump off sides, and I can't remember if it was Hamby, the center, or if it was Harrell, but the call was purple. It's like purple, purple, purple. And it was just like, snap it. And this may have been a 4th down, but you're throwing it to the home sideline, and it was a back shoulder to Crabtree. We would see that. But that converted a 4th down. But if like that flag doesn't get thrown, but that's what they were trained to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of some of the things that I thought of is like, man, you build this stuff in. I go to the inbounds thing. I said, coach kids that all the time. Like, hey, here's the play. But like if you just see somebody not guarding the guy under the basket, like let's just bounce pass it to him and then we make a layup. The end. Then we just keep it simple. Right. But does that get mucked up and is that gray area? Well, coach, I thought he was open, and that's maybe what you have here. I don't know, but that's
true.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, curious to hear from Red Raider fans out there what you thought about that sequence and that possibility. Chris, appreciate the insights as always, man. Enjoyed the conversation, and we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah, losing sucks. We'll get through it together. We always do. But just hashing some of this stuff out when the margins are just really close. And I'm sure like you've seen a lot of the video of a lot of the face masks out there. So I hate talking about officials, but boy, they sucked. I mean,
Colorado fans agree because they keep asking me, what about all the missed picks? And I'm telling them those were awesome. I loved them.
That's as I understand it, that is a lot of what the Colorado radio broadcast was talking about.
I thought those
on
were
their
great.
end, and so the pick plays and all that. But we can all agree, Buff Nation, Red Raider Nation, that crew. And if I had a third thumb, I'd point it down too. So
should be axed. Yeah,
that's right. Or just chop them off. Yeah, there you go.
Don't even let them make a pit stop at the Arena League. Just send them on out to an
Jeez,
island.
Man. Yeah.
All right, man. Appreciate the time as always. Appreciate you guys for being out there, of course, especially those everydayers. Thank you for once again joining us, and get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And of course, you can also hit the show notes for the link to become a Matador Mobster, your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. A great time of venting was had by all, I think, over the last 48 hours. Have enjoyed chopping it up and talking it out with the mobsters in the audience as well. Appreciate you guys as always. One of the best ways to help us grow the show is to comment anything below, and I mean anything is being commented this week. So thank you to so many of the Colorado and or Dion fans for helping to grow the show. We have noticed and appreciate you as well, and enjoyed it as always. Thanks for the time. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we'll see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.